Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and if you've ever been on a job interview and you want your next job interview to be great, you really have to take the time to plan things out in order to get the best results. Well, that's the same thing that the best salespeople are doing too in order to make that sell. We're always selling no matter what we do, but the real key to success in anything is about making the right decisions and taking the right actions. And if you want to be better than people that you're competing for in a job and you want to get that job and you want to rise to the top of the stack, you can't be on autopilot. And if you want to make the best impression in a job interview, you've got to make the best impression too and be prepared for it. Same thing happens if you are in sales. If you want to be like the people who are making the top money in any industry in sales, you've got to understand the key to success. And the key to success is it just doesn't happen. You have to be thinking critically and you got to do your homework. You've got to plan things out. Quality of life is based on decision-making processes. You're making the best decisions because you recognize what your choices are and you're asking yourself the right questions. That's where you're going to find your success. So let's talk about planning the sales call. So I've kind of given you some reasons to why planning is so important. But what goes on and what do you need to know and where do you get the information to make sure that you're doing the right things in order to lay down a solid foundation for your sales call or for your interview? Either way, it's essentially the same thing. You want to make sure that you are understanding what the buyer's perspective is or your potential employer's perspective is, and it should be your goal to earn his or her respect and confidence, right? If they're going to make a decision, they want to make the best decision possible. So you've got to be able to earn their respect and confidence. And from your perspective, you need to make sure that you're very clear on what your objectives are and you meet those as efficiently and effectively as possible. So essentially, there really are three different parts in the planning process that you should consider. Write these down. 1, gather information about your prospect or firm. If you want to work for an organization, you really have to do your homework and learn as much about that organization as possible. Learn as much about the person that you're going to be interacting with that's going to be making that buying decision or that hiring decision. And then 2, you need to be able to set clear objectives for that call. And then you've got to make the appointment. So, gather information about the prospect and firm. This really takes the most time. 2, setting clear objectives for you. What is the purpose? What do you want to accomplish out of the call or interview? And then 3, make the appointment. All right. So some of these sound pretty simple, but they're not as simple as you may think. So hopefully you find this video helpful in helping you prepare for your next job interview or for making a more effective sales call. So, the more information you have, the better you are prepared to help meet the needs of your potential employer or your potential buyer. Ultimately, you want to develop a long-term positive relationship with that organization, right? That should be the goal. You don't want to get a job so you can move on to the next job. You want to get a job so that you can grow with the organization, and you should be growing along with that organization to help meet its needs. And it really is in your future employer's best interest to help keep you there so they maintain the talent and knowledge and wisdom and you being able to navigate the systems properly rather than having to train someone new and then make new mistakes. So it really is a win-win situation. So they are making a very important decision in hiring you or choosing to do business with you, and you are making a very important decision to have a long-term relationship with that organization. So you've got to be aware of the costs that are involved and how to collect the right information and know what information that you need. We're going to cover that in this video. And so you always need to be making sure that you're updating what you know about your employer or your information so that you could be sufficiently meeting their needs and constantly adding value. Things that you may need to do and learn as you're doing your homework. One, you need to be able to know the person's name. Sounds pretty simple, but can you pronounce his or her name properly? We know from studying the success literature that the name of a person is one of the most important things, one of the most beautiful things that we hear. So we need to properly pronounce people's names right and show people the respect by using their name. Understand their family status, understand their education and aspirations. Those things shape what they believe and what they do and what's important to them. Know their interests and disinterests. Don't bring up a topic that's kind of edgy. I make it a really good point not to talk about religion, politics, or sex. I mean, those things really are none of my own business, and people feel very strongly about those things. Why not find out about what other things that are really important? And from another video that I've shared is, what is their social style? If you really want to be able to connect with people and understand them and them understand you, you've got to speak their language. And so really understanding their social style matters. And remember, social style is based on two basic criteria. Their responsiveness and their assertiveness. And so watch the video on that if you haven't done so already and refresh your memory, or do some research on it, because that really is key. Remember, when in Rome, do as the Romans. If you want to understand someone, you've got to apply the platinum rule. Do unto others as they wish to have done unto them. It's a really simple concept, but if it's important to them, it really must be important to you, and so you have to learn to speak their language. Also, you've got to understand their attitudes about, if you're in sales, about salespeople in general and about your company or product, because that will help you be able to say the right things to help that person be able to connect with you on a more personal basis. It's really all about relationships. And everybody has a boss, and everybody has formal reporting relationships, and so you need to understand how you fit into the relationship scheme with that company that you want to do business with or work for. You also need to be able to understand important reference groups and then what group norms are. Understanding culture of an organization helps you be able to adjust and helps people feel more comfortable about bringing you into their organization. And then you need to be able to understand what your product or service is and how people place important values on different qualities about your product or service. And the same thing goes true with if you're interviewing for a job. You could look at a job description and find out what's important to them and make sure that you are able to articulate how those things are important to you and how well you do those things. They want to hire the best person for the job, and they want to bring in the best quality product at the best value. You've got to be able to paint that process, and in order to do that effectively, you've got to really understand the order of importance on how they value things. Well, the same thing goes for you and me. We feel unsatisfied when things aren't meeting our values. And if we're not very clear on what our values are, we can't really put our finger on what's driving us up the wall or why we're not happy. So having a list that clearly identifies who you are and what's important to you is important. Well, you've got to do that with your potential client or potential employer too. So dig a little bit deeper. Understand the demographics of the organization. What is that organization all about? How many locations do they have? What are their products and services? What is their financial position for the future? Understand the culture, their customers. Who are they? You know, what does that organization look like? Be able to articulate it. You know, that's maybe a question that they'll ask you in a job interview. You know, who are we? What do you know about us? And being as clear as possible in answering the question shows that you're the kind of person that does his or her homework. And most likely, if you're doing that for a job interview, you're an above and beyond type of person. That's the type of person they want to hire. They don't want to hire someone that's just working on autopilot, right? So be the best that you can be and do your homework and really understand who it is that organization is and who the individuals are there. Likewise, you've got to understand the benefits that they seek from your product or service. You've also got to understand who your prospects' competitors are. And then you've got to be able to articulate what differentiates their competitors' products and services from theirs. That's an important thing. And so then you've got to understand strategic position. And I know I'm using a lot of business terms, but I'm a business professor. So really being able to ask the right questions of yourself so that you can be prepared to answer the right questions. You know, if you're in sales, you got to recognize historical buying patterns. That's important to understand. And these are questions that you can ask of other people in that organization. So some bits of information are easy to find and some things are not. You know, who are the suppliers of that organization? How satisfied are the vendors and suppliers of that organization? And how happy are they with the current suppliers that organization has? You know, what are the buying processes? And what are the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors? So these are important. And if you are in a job interview, it's probably hard to find out who else is applying for that job. But in sales, you can find out. You can use your critical thinking skills and ask people about it and develop your own formula. If there's one dissatisfied customer, there's probably other dissatisfied customers. So then in sales or in the interview process, you have to be able to figure out who makes the purchasing decision or who makes the hiring decision. How does that person fit within the organization? And what are their roles in the decision-making process? And then in the organization, there are always people who influence other people. Who are the most influential people in that organization? And so these are questions that you can ask of various employees or other people associated with the organization. Do recognize that there are always influential adversaries, and these people have a lot of influence too. So being able to win people over and understand people really is the best way to face that. Well, speaking of facing that, what types of challenges is the organization facing? And can you provide a solution for that? It is really kind of interesting to think about. You know, everything is about problems and solutions in the sales world. Well, that's the same thing you're doing in a job interview, is you are going to be trying to sell yourself as the solution for a particular problem. So frame it from that way. How can you add constant value? So you've got it. We're always in some types of systems, and being ethical is about understanding what's acceptable and not acceptable. And it really is about understanding the policies and procedures of things. How are things done? Why do we do things? What's expected of you? Being very clear on those types of things can help show that you are in alignment with that organization. I wouldn't want to work for an organization personally that I didn't feel like was in alignment with you or restricted me too much. And so you've got every interview as a time for you to understand if that's a good fit for you. So sometimes we have analysis paralysis. You know, we have to eat an elephant one bite at a time. And so sometimes making a checklist and doing things one step at a time helps us get closer to where we need to be. We need to be making sure that we're analyzing each situation and making the mental deposit. We're finding the right information and we're being prepared to articulate our solutions for that. How do we fit in to be to help make things better? So there are a lot of resources within the company records, sales portals, selling centers. Internet has a lot of information on it. You'd be surprised what's on the internet. So Do take a look deeply at the organization's website, but don't stop there. Look deeper into their social media. Think critically about what social media posts are all about. They're probably going to do that about you too. What does your social media say about you? So make sure that you're always putting your best foot forward. We're only our own brand managers, and no one else is going to do that for us. So you need to be making sure that you're putting out the best information, just like the organization that you're working for or you want to work for does the same thing too. Other sources of information may be the administrative assistants or secretaries and receptionists. You got to be nice to everybody. You may be surprised that if you are being authentic and you are being kind and nice, that these people would love to feel special and share information about it because you've earned it. Trust relationships are fragile, so you've got to earn that trust. So build trust with receptionists. Build trust with non-competing salespeople, in order to find out more about that more information about who you're going to be talking to and about the company itself. So, and of course, you can ask information when you're in an interview or in a sales call, which is really important. I think life really is about the quality of the questions that you ask. If you're constantly adding value because you understand what's important and you've asked the right questions, then there's a mutual win-win relationship. Other sources of information about organizations are trade shows, directories, current customers. Organizations often do businesses with consultants. The U.S. government keeps information on different companies, and so U.S. Commercial Service Market Research Library has information. So there's lots of information that you could take advantage of, but you've got to be ready with doing your homework and really being able to practice and be able to think through possible questions that they might have so that you can put your best foot forward. You have to understand what that relationship is going to look like, and you have to be able to paint that picture with words. Consider the organization's goals. Take a look at what the team goals are and what individuals' goals are as much as possible so that you can be able to show how you can add value. So, you've got to have very effective, smart goals, objectives. What is it that you hope to accomplish? I want to have get a job interview. I want to land the job. I want to learn more about the organization. And so what specific questions are you going to ask in order to find out more? All goals need to be measurable. I set time limits on things, being very clear to get quantity numbers if you can do things, or dates or due dates. What are organizational goals and objectives, and being able to get that painted picture in your mind. Any goals that you have need to be achievable, and you need to be able to understand cultural influences. And so there's a lot of things that when you're asking questions or you're setting objectives, that you're very specific on understanding what's needed of you and what you want to accomplish by any specific time. So you can do things, a lot of different things, in order to be prepared for an interview. And you must also do things to instill confidence in your with that prospect. Be able to set up times to help add value. Being able to recognize that if you're in sales, when you can get that order, and be able to set up for delivery, or make sure that you're coordinating any kind of advertising or marketing program. You may be offering a trial run, and I guess that can work in the job hiring process too. So making different offers might help you get your foot in the door and ease the any kind of stress or tension that a person may have, because you've made it worth their while. So ideally, you should have multiple call objectives. One, you should have a primary call objective. What is it that you would like to achieve. Figure out what's your minimum call objective. Maybe it's just to be able to introduce yourself and have them recognize your name. They may not hire you today, but they may give you information in the longer run because you've asked the right questions that could help you for the next opportunity. 2, what is your objective? Optimistic objective. Optimistically, you want to have so many orders if you're in sales, or you want a job and understand how your career pathway works so that you can be in alignment with that and grow with the organization. So really being clear on what you want to achieve matters. And then keep good records. I'm always impressed with people who are taking the time to write out, what their objective was and then what actually happened and the dates and who they talked to and information. I mean, it's really impressive when you're doing your homework. You're the kind of person that goes above and beyond, and you meet someone in one social situation. You take notes about who that person is and what they did, who their spouse is, and different types of information, and then you come back and say, hey, last time we talked 2 years ago, you did this and this and this, and how's that going? Or your wife was sick. I hope she's in better health today. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to build meaningful relationships and be seen as one of those people that is invaluable because you've got your stuff together. You're an above and beyond type of person. Is that you? Maybe if it wasn't you, today is the day that it starts being you. Where we focus our energy is where we get our results. So when you are engaging with somebody, really recognize whether or not they're receiving to your information, and then be assertive about, hey, it doesn't sound like this is interesting to you. I want to get back on track with you. Where did I lose you? Or what's not important to you? Or what are you frustrated with? Because you're watching the body language of people. So you're kind of being assertive about that type of language. And then you need to be a solution provider. So recognize that if you can demonstrate that you can be a solution, you're probably going to earn a person's respect. So you've got to do the right things at the right time. Many types of organizations will use video conferencing. Sometimes a webcasting or virtual sales calls are appropriate. I've conducted interviews using Skype, for instance, and that matters. So it kind of depends on what that organization does and where comfort levels are. There will always be people who are screening people that come through and putting up barriers, and so you need to be able to figure out how to get through to the decision maker ultimately. And sometimes it's about how you interact with people. You can work with the person who's the screener, you can go over the screener, or you can go under the screener, finding other people who can help connect you to the person that you want to talk to. Ultimately, remember, the phone has a good purpose. The phone is to create a meeting time and place, but don't make the sales call over the phone. And if you're going to be prepared for a sales call, you have to be able to anticipate objections, and then learn how to respond. So that's what I mean about doing your homework. You're doing critical thinking. I hate to compare it to chess because you're not trying to beat somebody, but you want to make sure that you understand how they think and what questions that they may have so that you can help answer them in the most positive way in order to help them see the value that you can provide for them. So by anticipating objectives, you're deciding how to respond, and you can do it in an effective way. And you have to really listen. So listening really is the most important part in the communication process. Remember, we should be listening 80% and talking 80%. And if you're listening to understand, when you hear things like, I'm sorry, but the manager is busy, you don't take that as, oh, they're trying to get rid of me. What you could say, the proper response is she said the manager is busy, is you could say, I'll take only a few minutes. Should I call back later, or can I set up an appointment with you? It's really easy. Or I already have that product. That's fine. I want to talk to the manager about some new features for design companies like ours. Or I take care of that particular task. That's fine. I'd like to speak to the manager about the total service, and so those types of things, are helping you recognize that just because a person may say something that appears to be a block, if you're really listening to what they're saying, you recognize that your answer can help you get the best decision possible to help you add value with what you have to offer. So, I've given you a lot to think about, but the bottom line in this long lecture is about if you want to make the sale or you want to get the job, you really have your homework. You have to be above and beyond type person. In many job situations, there are 100 people or more applying for that job. If you're doing your homework and you're crossing all the I's and crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's, then you are more likely to be a closer fit for somebody who wants to hire the best. So be the best. Do your research, understand what the answers are, be a person of integrity, practice critical thinking, but be prepared and understand that if you're not doing your research, probably somebody else is. And that would make that other person the ideal person for this job. Right? Cool. All right, I've given you a lot to think about in this 27-minute video. I truly appreciate your time. Thanks so much for watching this to the end. I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.